Hi, my name is Tyagi, and in this video, I'll be going over less than 24-hour SAT Cram study plan. So to start, this video is designed for people who have an SAT coming up within 24 hours, right, around that, and they haven't started studying at all, and they need some way just to get started and cram, a lot of content and maybe improve their score a little bit through this 24 hours before their test. So far, before I go into the plan, the three-step plan, there's three key things you have to recognize about this cram plan, right? The first thing to recognize is that there are no tricks to the SAT, right? There's nothing in this video that is going to give you some magical way to, improve your score, immediately by like points, like a ton of points, right? There really is no kind of, super tricks or super whatever, right? It really boils down to just the SAT, right? Being able to reason and solve questions, right? And to do this, right, to reason and solve questions, you need to actually put in the work. You need to put in the practice. You need to put in the time. There is no tricks or kind of things that can help you all that much, right? So the reason I'm saying this is because I don't want you to waste your time watching YouTube videos other than this one, or watching just like reading content or whatever, reading books, right? Because that's not going to help you. Just trying to figure out the tricks, trying to figure out the secret strategy isn't going to help you because there is no tricks or secret strategy that exists, right? Second thing that doesn't help you that kind of goes along with this is memorizing, stuff like math formulas. Grammar is okay. You can try to learn some grammar rules before, but math formulas is something you should not try to memorize before your test. Because the idea is, right, if you're trying to memorize math formulas, and even grammar to some extent, right, you need to actually know how to apply those formulas and those rules, not just be able to recite them, right? The test isn't about memorization or reciting facts. It's, again, about solving problems, and memorizing stuff isn't going to help you to solve a problem and, know how to actually do it. So that's my first tip. Second key tip is to don't, take care of yourself, right? Don't do any all-nighters. Don't like stress yourself out too much, right? I mean, you've kind of, not studied well, right? You haven't studied at all. But, doing an all-nighter, stressing yourself out about it isn't going to help you, right? You need sleep. You need to eat well. You need to make sure your body's well to do well in the test. And so trying to do an all-nighter, trying to do this isn't going to help you, not going to improve your score, right? You can't do anything in that all-nighter that'll really significantly improve you. And, you're going to hurt yourself more just by not keeping yourself healthy. And so relaxing, I think, is a key thing, right? You can do the best if you relax and realize that, okay, I haven't studied well, but I'm going to try my best and I'm going to give, everything I've got in the test. And, you got to also realize that this isn't your only chance, right? The SAT runs basically every month, so you have another chance. So relax, okay? And the third thing is you will not be prepared for everything, right? Nothing you will do in this 24 hours will prepare you for everything. And that's okay, right? You don't need to be prepared for everything because, some things you already should know, hopefully. Some things you're probably already good at. So you don't have to prepare everything and you don't need to know everything because some things just might be easier on the test, some things might be harder. It's all really luck. So relax, and there are no tricks. So here is the plan, right? And this is pretty similar to my 1 month plan. So if you're going to take the SAT again, watch that video and see how a good maybe 1 month study plan might be like. So the first step, right? The first step is always to take a diagnostic test. And since we don't have luxury of time, you need to either choose a section like reading, writing, or math that you feel you're worse on, and focus on that for the study plan. If you have extra time, obviously, then do more sections or choose both sections. But if you don't, then just choose one section. And then what I want you to do is to take half a practice test, right, of your section, so the reading, writing section or the math section on the Blue Book app. Right, I recommend like 9 or 10 because those are the newer ones. But take half of it and take it under real time pressure or time constraints and real, test setting. Okay, and the reason why is this just helps you know like how the test is like, get a feel for the environment you'll be taking it in. But also it helps with practice, right? It helps you identify the skills you're weak in, right? So once you take the test, you're gonna have to review the questions you got wrong and categorize them, and then see which questions that are the worst on, which questions that are the best on, and then focus, right, on the questions you're the worst on, right? You really want to try to hammer home and do the questions that you did bad on and just work on those, right? And for this, you can use the SAT question bank, right? Just go to search for SAT question bank, uh, select your topic, and then just do questions from there. Right, when you're practicing, right, you want to also make sure that you're reviewing mistakes. So really consider, after you get a question and you get it wrong, maybe, really consider why you did it wrong, analyze why did I select this answer? Why is the correct answer correct, right? Because that's how you improve. You improve by doing questions and understanding why you're getting questions wrong and how to fix that. That's how you improve. And also try to focus on questions that give you a lot of score improvements in terms of, how much time you put in, right? Some questions, they can really improve your score for a little bit amount of time. Some questions, they take a lot of time and they don't really improve your score. So some low ROI questions would be things like vocab, right? Because there's so much lists and there's so much stuff, right? You can't study it, it won't improve your score that much. Science kind of passages, right? The hard ones at least, because these questions, these kind of passages are something you need to practice and try to spend time doing so you understand how to actually analyze them. And like I said before, like memorizing like math formulas and topics like trigonometry are like rarely tested that much, so that's kind of also something to not focus on. Then we have high ROI topics, and so some topics for this would be things like grammar questions, right? So grammar in general is a pretty high ROI topic, right? So you get a lot out of doing grammar questions. Specifically, I think sentence structure is a good type of question to practice. Transitions is pretty easy to also improve on. For grammar, it's pretty good. Then you have rhetorical synthesis, which is your bullet point questions. Those are pretty easy to improve on. Inferences are pretty easy too in the reading section. Text structure and purpose, right? The questions that have like an underline and ask you to try to explain or pick what that means, underlined. And then for math, I think questions like basic algebra and like linear systems are pretty easy, right? And just learning how to use Desmos is a good idea too for the math section, right? Because you can solve most of the problems on Desmos for the SAT. And finally, the third step is to make sure you understand the test and understand this strategy, right? There's not a lot of strategies for the test, but this is a key strategy you should know, and it's around timing. So the test is 4 modules, right? 2 reading modules with 27 questions each for 32 minutes, right? So 2 of those reading ones, which means you have about 1 minute and 11 seconds per module. And then for the math module, you have 22 questions, 35 minutes, 2 math modules, and you have about a minute and 35 seconds. And again, they're both adaptive, so your performance on the first module will determine whether or not you get a harder second or easier second module. So the main thing I want you to take away from this kind of understanding the test section is timing, right? So you do not have luxury of time on the SAT, right? Some questions are going to kind of be a time sink. They're going to take a lot of time to solve and do. But the key thing to recognize is that all the questions on the SAT are worth the same amount of points, right? So you should not spend, for the reading section, more than a minute and like 10 seconds per question, right? And so if you read a question and you think it's going to take you, longer than a minute or a minute 10 seconds, right? Skip the question because there's going to be easier questions that are quicker that give you, more points than that question. So skip it. Math section, same thing. If you think a problem is going to take you a minute longer than a minute and 30 seconds, or you just can't figure out, where to even start with the problem, skip it because there's going to be easier questions that you can solve down the road. Don't spend your time, just like wasting on one problem, right? You should be, moving on rapidly and not spending more than time, allotted per question. And yeah, that's my 24-hour SAT Cram study plan. Again, key thing to recognize is this isn't your only chance. Relax. You can try your best to, do this plan, maybe improve your points and your score a little bit. But at the end of the day, you're not really going to improve it that much by doing this because you don't have enough time. The SAT is all about time and putting in the work, which this plan really doesn't allow you to do. But yeah, I mean, try your best, relax, and you always have another chance to take it. And yeah, that's it for today. Thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow. Bye.